Mahashivaratri, everybody, and welcome to this beautiful live stream where I'm going to share about my 5-MeO DMT experience I had this past weekend, where I consumed a significant amount of 5-MeO DMT, I would say. And afterwards, I had a breathwork session, which opened me up even deeper. And now I find myself in a constantly altered state of consciousness with intense energies working through me and my mind being completely blown to pieces, very much scattered. So excuse me if I can't even talk properly, as I'm having difficulty to properly focus my mind even. So it feels awfully similar to a spiritual emergency, dark night of the soul crisis I had almost 1.5 years ago, where I entered into this intense 3-month period after a 5-MeO DMT experience. And now I am navigating all sorts of emotions and things that are coming up right now. So this is going to be interesting, but first of all, happy Mahashivaratri. It's the night of Shiva, right? We are celebrating the the merging of Shiva and Parvati. We are celebrating, this cosmic phenomena which has been around for quite some time. So let's start with the song to sing to Shiva. Thank you. Om Namah Shivaya. Praise to the destroyer, of everything that is false, so we can enter into the silence and the stillness of the formless, of the absolute, of God. Hey Woody D, good to see you here. Good evening, my brother. Glad to be here. Hope you're well. Yes, I am doing fairly well. That's what I'm gonna expand on right now. So, feel free to comment along, ask any questions. I don't even know where to start the story. I don't even know what happened last week. Like, this is why also the live stream now is happening on Wednesday instead of the usual Sunday, because I have blown my mind to pieces throughout that weekend. It was a crazy weekend. So, to back it off, if you haven't watched the last live stream, there I think I shared that I have had... Well, I've been on this journey of exploring 5-MeO DMT recently for a couple of weeks now. First it started with low to medium doses, then I went a bit up and I had 2 to 3 very big openings and very beautiful experiences which really connected me to the bliss of being, to this freedom, to my highest excitement. And then to integrate that, afterwards I had another 5-MeO DMT experience, which was very challenging. It really shook me to the core of my being. There was lots of resistance. My ego was struggling. I wasn't even grounding back properly afterwards, and it was just very tough to take some lessons out of this. And now integrating this, some time has passed. And this weekend, like last weekend on Saturday, I went out into the forest and was shooting some videos, creating some content, being in nature. It was wonderful. And somehow the opportunity opened up for me, and the inspiration came to enter into the 5-MeO DMT space. And I was just following that feeling, following that sensation, following that inspiration in the moment. Having actually one of my first 5-MeO DMT experiences in the, well, not my first actually, quite some have been in nature, but it was nice to be there in nature, in the forest, with the 5-MeO DMT. And I was working with the vape pens, right? I was easing my way into the experience, first starting with the 1 to 12 vape pen, then slowly moving up to the 1 to 4, and then even moving up to the 1 to 2, but it seemed like there was some tolerance, so I wasn't fully breaking through into this complete unifying field of consciousness, but definitely it was a very significant, very beautiful, very deep experience as well. Really merging into this sense of surrender. Even with open eyes, it was beautiful that I was looking up and all these like patterns of the tree merged into one infinite pattern over my complete visual field with open eyes, which was very interesting. And deep realizations and lessons, and really a peaceful experience. Definitely, I could notice some thoughts. Really, I was very aware of when a thought was entering and when it was leaving, being this awareness in this silent space. And very beautiful, deep realizations, some things that I was remembering, and that was very beautiful. A couple of those were everything is meant to be. One of the great truth of our reality, I find, is that everything we are experiencing, everything that exists in reality is meant to be, because otherwise it wouldn't be. Otherwise it wouldn't be the case. The very fact that this lighter here exists is because it is already approved by God. It is already approved by reality. Otherwise it wouldn't be here. And the same goes for experiences and for even very hard things for the mind to grasp or understand, like humanly perceived and judge, like we're judging things as bad or horrible, like a war or people starving. All of these things, they're meant to be. Everything is meant to be. That was one of the insights. What else? The other ones I even see, they fade away so quickly. I even can't remember or grasp them again. Faith was another one, that we can trust in life, that we can trust in God, that all is well, that now is all there ever is another one, another beautiful one. Yeah. And in this surrender, I could also feel this energy like completely moving through my body, right? Very much, lots of energy moving through my body. And in the moment it was totally good, it was totally fine, but it was definitely a prolonged session, and over a very short period of time, I would say maybe an hour, I was vaping quite a bit of 5-MeO DMT. It was quite a journey of vaping more and more and more and more, and being, well, considerate but a bit careless, I would say. And definitely pushing it a bit, being a bit careless, being a bit like, should I take more? And still taking more, right? So that was the experience, which was fine. And then afterwards I felt a bit like definitely still high, scattered, exhausted, which was normal. It was a proper hard day. I did a lot of stuff. Hello, Kali, good to see you. And yeah, the realization that this was something that is gonna have lasting effects was coming towards the evening. Like I was even driving the car, which I don't know if I should have even done that, was properly challenging, right? It was properly, it took some focus, and I could notice the lingering effects. But it was fine. I was arriving back home, and then I was still like visiting my parents, and still having a crazy night, eating something, and then still being at night, being at home. I was so exhausted, but still very much energized, and I could really see even my visual field still twisting and turning, and I was like, wow. I like, to the point where I got nauseous just closing my eyes. Like I couldn't close my eyes because I was still so much in this whirlwind of consciousness twisting and turning, and that was absolutely right, a recognition. And I was like, okay, this is a recognition right now, and I have to write something. And I recognized, like, okay, it's gonna pass, right? Calming myself down. We'll just sleep, rest well, and see what happens tomorrow. The next day I was waking up and I was like, okay, I am still very much in this experience. I'm super tired somehow. I'm very exhausted, and I'm like, I'll just give it a rest and see what happens. But even that day was a packed day. I was going out to church, to Sunday service, and it was a very touching sermon. And an old friend of mine was actually preaching. I haven't seen him for a while. He was preaching in a church in my city. And it was a very touching, very significant kind of like sermon and presentation, which deeply resonated. It was talking about some verse in, I think it was John, and it talked about that you shall be hating this life. You shall hate this life to the point where when you hate this life and you reject, neglect this, basically what's meant with that, this selfishness and that egotism and that self-centeredness, you'll have eternal life. You shall love your life, right? Your agape, the love of God, your eternal life. Something along those lines, I'm paraphrasing here. But it was a very like touching sermon. I was like, wow, okay, I'm in this intense state, almost like fearing to lose myself, right? And then hearing that was a beautiful kind of like reminder. But still, I was just a bit out of my mind. I was just a bit like, I don't know, right? A bit confused, I would say, a bit scattered, still feeling the 5-MeO DMT. But that day was a special day. And I still had a very intense breathwork session coming up that I signed up for. And I was like, okay, this is going to be very interesting now in this state with the lingering after effects of the 5-MeO DMT, to go into a 90-minute breathwork session with cacao ceremony and sound bath. That's going to be quite interesting. Okay, Kali, I'll answer your question before I continue on with my story. Are you not scared of drug-induced psychosis from the frequent tripping? I guess I'll get into this after I finish the story, because this is exactly kind of like, it's a consideration, it's a risk, it's a fear that is coming up for sure. And it's a very interesting question, what it means to have drug-induced psychosis, what psychosis even is. I am not quite clear on that. So I was going to this breathwork session. I was like, okay, I'm in. Like, I signed up for this. I still have even some lingering after effects from my health situation, right? So I couldn't do breathwork sessions or not even go for a proper run for the past 3 months, I would say, because I was sick. I got sick in Madagascar, right? And then I had... what's it called, pleurisy, a pleurisy, kind of like an infection of the lungs, where I just can't breathe that much properly. Like if I would take a deep breath or be out in the cold and go for even a fast walk or run, like my lungs would hurt and I would feel this like stabbing pain. So I was afraid and very cautious of going into breathwork sessions. But now it's been 3 months of recovery, and I was like, I just have to try. I have to be ready. So that was another consideration. And even in the day before, when I was vaping and smoking the 5-MeO DMT, I felt this huge like stabbing pain in my chest while I was inhaling and holding the smoke, which was also like, ooh, made me very concerned about the breathwork session itself. But I still decided to do it, and that is what happened. And breathwork in and of itself is such a wonderful, magical modality, right? Just the breathwork in and of itself can open you up to altered states of consciousness as intense, if not even more intense, than psychedelic journeys. That's why Stanislav Grof, after he worked a lot with high doses of LSD, 600 to 700 micrograms, 500 micrograms of LSD, he was, when it got prohibited and he couldn't practice officially the psychedelic assisted therapy anymore, he was moving to his new different modality, which is holotropic breathwork, basically doing this specific type of deep breathing for 3 hours or more, around, more or less, in this proper ceremonial kind of space. And it's a very beautiful modality. And I've had so many great journeys with breathwork alone. And this one was very beautiful as well. 90 minutes, not the 3 hours, but also not like a shorter version. So it was a proper journey. And even in the journey itself, it was very intense. It got to a point where I was like, this is like, I was pushing hard and through, but it got to a point where I was like, this is insane how intense it is. And yeah, it just intensified this whole experience and the after effects of the 5-MeO DMT. Just as a side note, my most beautiful insight from the breathwork session, it's always a good reminder, and I'll have to remind myself over and over again of this, is to slow down. To slow down. Because with the 5-MeO, right, and the psychedelics and everything in my life, even with business and relationships and everything I'm passionate about and everything I'm doing, I have the tendency to over-invest myself, to hurry, to do it fast, to like just go into the extreme. And here in the breathwork session, I was breathing very hard, and I wanted to breathe myself to some place which is very far out. And then my facilitator was coming, beautiful facilitator. He was doing beautiful, fantastic work. And I think he was putting his hand on my chest, and he was saying to me like, dude, like, slow down. Slow your breathing down. And then I slowed my breathing down from this intense like this intense like trying to breathe myself somewhere to and it was inspiring and setting in motion this huge release. Whoa, I could feel this, like, just these couple of breaths, I could feel these right now in my consciousness. And I could feel this humongous release and this humongous beauty of slowing down. And the realization that slowing down doesn't even mean that I'm losing anything. Actually, it means that I can move with much more groundedness, power, clarity, ease, one step at a time. And it makes it even more beautiful. And it doesn't lose in intensity if I slow myself down. I don't lose the speed by slowing down. So a beautiful reminder over and over again. I finished the breathwork session, and just like when we stopped breathing, these like after effects and lingering sensations and vibrations are always very intense, but this day they were like double in intensity, and I was like, wow. like intense emotional processing. Something was coming up to the surface, but beautiful, kind of like end of the journey. And that's the thing with breathwork as well. Breathwork and psychedelics is a very interesting combination, right? There's lots of perspectives out there around, shall you be combining psychedelics and breathwork? How do they work together in the space itself, in the psychedelic experience itself, but also before and afterwards? Breathwork meaning maybe being a modality of integration of your psychedelic experiences. Maybe there has been something opened up in psychedelic space, and then a breathwork session can close that down again. There has been a process set in motion with the psychedelic, and the breathwork can deepen that. And all of these things are present, but also there's perspectives that say okay, even breathwork itself can set in motion a certain spiritual crisis, or it can, if you open something with the psychedelic, it can open up even more, which can then lead to difficulties with the integration, because you're so open and there's so much stuff at the surface of your being that it's hard to navigate day-to-day tasks with this open state of consciousness. And this is where I feel myself and my situation falling into right now. So even then I was like, okay, this was an intense weekend. Monday I woke up even more exhausted, more tired, absolutely in a very exhausted state of being. My nose got blocked again. I felt very sick almost a bit. And I noticed okay, still not back to baseline basically. And Monday I wasn't even really thinking about the extended after effects of these experiences. Even though I was aware of it, I was like, okay, I'll just do my work and then go about my day as usual. And I couldn't do it. I was like, this is not the way I can just go about my daily tasks. My mind was so scattered that I couldn't really focus on one single thing. I couldn't even be focusing on one task for a minute. And it's hard to describe this state. Then the day was passing, I was distracting myself and going about doing all kinds of things. Went to sleep again. Next day, still not back to baseline. And I was like, okay, this is where the realization was coming in. This is something that I'll have to consciously integrate. This has set in motion a process which feels oddly similar to my spiritual crisis. Maybe not in intensity, but definitely, some similar considerations are coming up. And now let me take a deep breath, because I feel nervous, a little bit anxious, and fearful to even inquire into this and share this present experience of mine. But as we're here together, and we might be inquiring into this state of being together and see what's coming up. So, where do we start this inquiry? First of all, I might also mention regarding the 5-MeO DMT. It's a wonderful observation now for me as a practitioner, and being curious about working with the substance on deeper levels, and maybe even learning to facilitate it in the future, to get to know the potential of this substance, right? I have been aware, and I have been made aware by my spiritual crisis of the potential of this substance. And what's very fascinating for me personally about the 5-MeO DMT is its potential for the long-lasting effects, for the permanent transformation and changes it can set into motion that will play out after the trip has ended, after the experience has ended. And back then, when in end of 2023, when I was moving into my spiritual crisis, it was a bit muddy, it was a bit cloudy, I was not quite sure if the cause of it was the 5-MeO DMT. Because just for you as a remembrance, I still feel I wouldn't recommend this practice, but I combined 5-MeO DMT with MDMA. I was on my first MDMA journey, high dose MDMA journey, and went into 3 breakthrough attempts with 5-MeO DMT. So it was a very intense combination. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. There seem to be practitioners out there who do successfully work with that combination, but there's also controversy in the field that, first of all, it's just not needed to potentiate or combine 5-MeO DMT with any substance, and it might be potentially physically harmful for your body, causing the potential for serotonin syndrome, or which can lead to death. So that was a bit like muddy and clouding the interpretation of my experiences. Is like, was it just the 5-MeO DMT that catapulted me into this spiritual crisis with prolonged lasting effects after this experience for 3 months, or was it this combination, this special combination that set this into motion? And now over the past few days and weeks, as I've been finally for the first time starting to work with 5-MeO again, also in certain different dosages, I can recognize now and kind of like understand for myself that 5-MeO itself has the potential, I guess just as any psychedelic does, but for me 5-MeO specifically, to set in motion this prolonged effect, to set in motion the potential, which is very common in the field and in the community, commonly known, for flashbacks, or maybe reactivations is a better word, or as it's the case for me right now, just prolonged effects. So the prolonged effects, which is now relating to my state of being, for me what it includes at the moment is, it's a subtle sense of vibration, these energetic vibrations. During the smoking of the 5-MeO, I feel this energy, basically. Energy is a very accurate word. This charging up of energy in my whole system. And this energy is still very much present. So there's a subtle vibration throughout my whole body. And then at the same time, there is a certain, it feels like there is a certain dissociation from my body and from my mind. So I feel a bit disconnected from my body. And I feel disconnected from my mind. I feel a bit disconnected and dissociated from my sense of self, from my ego mechanisms, which has the consequence of my mind and my focus being a bit scattered, not being able to focus on a task that I set myself to properly, not even able to think through things properly, because I'm so out of my mind, basically, because my mind is still so scattered and blown to pieces. While I was in the gym, for example, I was trying to ground myself in the gym yesterday, or 2 days ago, I think it was, to feel the body again. And even in the gym, like, everything was intensifying to a point where, the non-ordinary state of consciousness was intensifying. But even as I was kind of like doing the exercises, I couldn't feel them in the same way as I usually do in the gym. I couldn't feel my body in the same way that I usually do in my exercise experiences, which is concerning for the mind. then even just like my next step was then taking a cold shower, because there was this tendency, this desire coming up, this wish coming up to ground myself, to just feel myself, to feel my body again, to blow out these thoughts and these concerns. And then another point of this experience, and another characteristic of this present moment experience of mine is well, I did a post about it yesterday. I posted about fear, right? So it's fear of what? And mainly I would say there is a fear of instability in consciousness, which is reminding me of this spiritual crisis. Like there is a dawning and a daunting knowing that there might be a potential. That's what the fear is talking to. It's always talking to a point in the future which is not present or real right now, right? But it's like a daunting that, almost like a daunting of a spontaneous reactivation, and then a fear that this might happen in the car. It might happen in situations where it's not appropriate to happen, like in the gym. A dawning of maybe me being taken out of my body, falling unconscious. And it's a story of the mind, it's a story of the ego. It feels like my sense of self, the sense of I, the sense of me and my identity, it feels a bit threatened. It feels a bit like, right? It feels a bit this fear of death. This fear of, oh, what are we on the brink of discovering here? What are we on the brink of doing? As 5-MeO is kind of like this ego dissolving substance and experience in the moment itself. By taking the substance in the moment and preparing ourselves for that experience, we have a certain readiness to let go into this. At least I can just talk for myself. But when it happens or continues to happen or doesn't stop to happen after the experience, this illusion of the framework that the container of the psychedelics is a place for ego dissolution breaks apart. And then there is this sensation of ego dissolution that is happening continuously, which is threatening and which is anxiety inducing if there is not a deep readiness or a willingness to let go, surrender, inquire, and relax into that. Right? So this is kind of like the process that's happening for me right now. And it's not pleasant. There's also certain other sensations that come along with that experience. For example, if I feel into this sometimes quite regularly throughout the day, I feel nauseous. I almost feel like throwing up, which is interesting. Like there's this feeling in my stomach, definitely. There's a tightness in my chest, still a bit of that stabbing, which might be a consequence of that breathwork session. But definitely like just a very, like through this intensity of perception and this very self-aware, reflective process that is happening towards the state of my being and my awareness, there is an awareness of the uncomfortableness of that, which is uncomfortable. I don't like it. But that's a judgment, right? That's a judgment from the mind. That's a judgment from the ego that is coming in. And so I've been talking to my coach about this yesterday. And something interesting was coming up for me. Because the process now is one of integrating this. And there's several ways to go about this integration, right? Just the field of psychedelic crises is very interesting, right? Spiritual emergencies and prolonged after effects that might sound similar to or have a flavor of psychosis might be interesting, right? It's and the tendency I've been taking the first day and maybe even the second day, and there's still a tendency within me to follow through on that strategy, is okay, I need to distract myself. Like, the ego is judging, this is bad, I'm not ready for this, whatever's happening, I don't like it, I don't want it to be. So I rather distract myself all day till this is over and we're back to baseline. A better formulation or a more conscious approach of that grounding is namely that, grounding. Saying like, okay, I am willing to do certain actions and follow up with certain action steps that I know will help me to ground myself, will help me to bring back to my body, doing the cold showers, being out in nature, maybe doing barefoot walks, eating heavy food like meat and potatoes, and really, trying to ground myself back down, doing some yin yoga, whatever it is that helps you ground. But there's certain action steps you can do to really ground yourself. Also, one is mapache tobacco, which I haven't tried yet because of my lungs, but I might smoke a bit with you guys right now, because this really helps me. It helps me to center myself and ground myself. So this strategy of like, okay, let's ground ourselves is another one. Instead of distracting, we are consciously grounding and basically integrating by grounding, which is a nice approach. I like that approach. But what came up with my coach yesterday, and by the way, if you're curious about coaching, if you are in a similar situation, there's a link in the video description where you can book a call with me, a free one-on-one call, where we can talk about your specific situation of psychedelic integration and explore ways to work together and to build up support structures. I found coaching is a wonderful way. I do offer a one-on-one coaching, but I also do offer group coaching. There's a community. It's the Psychedelic Actualization Path to Purpose community, where we come together and we bring ourselves and our present situation of life into the space, and we support each other and empower each other to integrate our experiences, find clarity and direction after our psychedelic experiences, or maybe even before our psychedelic experiences. It's this beautiful system of support and communication. So if you're curious about that, link is in the video description as well. And also, if you're not able to financially contribute or are not curious to work with me directly, there's also a third link. It's 5 steps to embody your psychedelic insights into daily life. That's a free guide, a complete ebook I wrote around integrating psychedelic experiences, which basically talks to these certain different ways of integrating. But what came up with my coach in that coaching session of mine yesterday was that, okay, I find myself in this plastic state after this 5-MeO DMT breathwork experience. How can I perceive this and how can I go about this? I can perceive it as an opportunity. I can say this right now is an opportunity for me to inquire deeper, to work with the uncomfortableness, to process the emotions that are bubbling up, the topics that are bubbling up. There's an opportunity for me to look into them now, process them properly, go deeper into this sense of dissolution. And I am shitless. I'm scared shitless. I am totally afraid to do this. Like, just to think about this, I was recognizing yesterday, is very daunting to me. But there is also a certain curiosity. There is a certain readiness for me to look at this, to take this window of opportunity, because I know I will inevitably return to normal state consciousness, even though it doesn't feel like that in the moment. But to make use of this experience, of this prolonged, expanded, altered state of consciousness, which I did to a certain extent last time in my spiritual crisis, but to a certain extent I was going with these first few strategies, distracting myself and grounding myself, for sure. Leaving spirituality behind, and just like, okay, I was on a quest for finding support, for sure. I was trying out all kinds of things, and even it did definitely at the end deepen my spiritual connection like nothing else did. So it's also a beautiful reminder to have been through a similar experience, maybe even on a more intense level, and say, like, I came out of this. It was the hardest experience of my life. It was the most suffering I have ever experienced in this dark night of my soul. But it has also been eventually the most spiritually rewarding. And everything that came out of this, even just the friends I made throughout that time, was the biggest blessing that I have received so far in my life. I remember, just to give you like a little context of the fear that is coming up for me at the moment regarding this, like, spontaneous out-of-body experiences or whatever. I'll share a story back then from my spiritual crisis. I remember I was going to a rainbow gathering in Spain, and I was in this intense state, which is similar to the state I'm in right now, but much more intense. And I was in this crisis mode, not knowing what's going on, scattered mind, confused, whatever's happening. And you know, things like, little things would happen that would completely validate the fear of losing my stability of consciousness, the fear of going insane, the fear of spontaneous out-of-body experiences. For example, I was sitting around the fire. It was a hot day. Maybe I was a bit dehydrated as well, but everything was already intensified, right, in this psychedelic state of consciousness without having taken anything. And then I had to sneeze. I was sneezing. I was like, whooshia! And in that moment of sneezing, I was completely blasted out, and everything intensified, and it was feeling like a start of a DMT experience, or a 5-MeO DMT experience. I was completely blasted out of my mind and out of my body. Everything was intensifying. My visual perceptual field was turning to patterns and light, and I was just like, everything, I heard this high-pitched sound, this tinnitus, and I was blasted out of my body for a short period of time. And it took me a good, I would say, 5 minutes. Well, a couple, like 1 minute blasted out, maybe 30 seconds, and then a good 5 minutes to 7 minutes to ground again and say, like, whoa, okay, shit, like, to even move again and feel my body again and be able to stand up and walk. That's scary if that happens just like on a normal day-to-day basis without having taken any substance. So yeah, but now I can also see it with humor, right? So, even though in the moment it was not fun, but yeah, this is the practice, right? So it's a window of opportunity to say, like, now I feel more ready to take this opportunity and say, I am moving with it. I'm inquiring into this. I'm ready for this. I'm relaxing into it. Maybe I'm even doing certain practices that will support the processing of that. Like chanting a little bit of mantras, sitting in meditation, throughout the night of Mahashivaratri today. In doing some parts work was something that my coach was coming up with. Inviting that part that is afraid out. What part of me is afraid? What part of me is feeling that fear? What is it that I'm afraid of? Even though at the deepest core of my being I know that there's nothing that I have to be afraid of. That on the other side of that fear, on the other side of that daunting, is everything I want. Allowing myself to slow down, to journal about it, to do some shamanic journeying, listen to binaural beats, really do some contemplation, do some self-inquiry. Go into the fear and the emotions. This is what the work is about. And then face that head on instead of turning my head away from it, trying to avoid it, judge it. Because I know from the psychedelic journeys themselves that the lesson is to move into the fear. And trust. But also at the same time be kind to myself and trust that that's okay. If I'm not ready, that's okay as well. Kali saying, my doc told me drugs are bad for you when talking about mushroom truffles, but then put me on antidepressants. Hypocrite. Yeah, antidepressants are also certain kinds of drugs, right? And we have to meet our doctors with compassion. It's well, some have good considerations for sure, but what I have found in some conversations with my doctors is that many just don't know enough, and that's just the way it is. It's not their fault. As Jesus said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And it seems to be, at times at least, it's this innocent not knowing or having heard that drugs are bad. And yeah, maybe also oversimplifying. Lots of things to say about this, right? And as we see right here, it's not that drugs are bad, but it's that especially these psychedelic molecules that we're working with have side effects. There's potential risks involved in the use of these substances. For example, working with 5-MeO DMT or any other psychedelic could lead to a permanent alteration of your consciousness, which might be very challenging to process, which you might not be ready for, which might prohibit you to follow through with your normal day-to-day life, in your relationships or in your job, which can even bring about a sense of existential spiritual crisis. But definitely I found that with the psychedelics there's a greater potential to treat or look at the root cause of what's making you suffer, instead of many other medications which are treating the symptoms of your pain and of your suffering, not looking at and not going to the root cause of what's causing your suffering. So instead of softening the suffering and saying like, okay, we're going to be clouding it and hope that you just don't feel it that much, sometimes the psychedelics, they come in and they say, okay, we're going to make you suffer even more. So you can really come to this breaking point of realizing that all your suffering is coming from this source, which is your judgment, which is you, which is the sense of me, which is this old life, this earth, this earthly life that the Bible is talking about, that we should hate. This self-centeredness. And in this process of healing, in this process of awakening, in this process of coming back to wholeness, to oneness, to truth, to love, inevitably there's lots of suffering. And there might be so many resistances and fears that are coming up that you'll have to face at one point or another. And it's not for everybody, right? This is why doctors just can't recommend or give out recommendations to psychedelics for anybody. Because it's not for everybody. It's like I feel that it's not even for most people. At least in the intensity that some of us are working with this space. But yeah, basically the conclusion of that coaching session was that my coach was like, okay, or I was like coming out with the sensation that a guy might be ready to look into this a bit more, to move with this. Because this is, there seems to be a very important lesson for me right here in this period of my life. And also it's a beautiful development with the substance itself. I'm getting to know the 5-MeO DMT space on a very intimate level. Like the way it's just working, it's incredible. Like the potency of it. To blow your mind. And then to keep this mind be like in this completely open space, in this completely, like it's incredible. The power of it. But also with that power, with that potency comes a certain sense of responsibility on our side and our use of that substance. Our approach to this work. It feels like there's going to be a great deal of care involved in working with one of the most powerful entheogens on this earth. And it's just this very new field, right? Especially with the 5-MeO DMT, where there's just studies in infancy mode. They're just starting to research some of the potential after effects, prolonged effects, healing potentials of 5-MeO DMT. There's no real ancient traditions or cultures that have proven frameworks for how to work with this substance. It's fascinating. It's a very beautiful field. Very interesting field. By the way, just everybody who's watching, I deeply appreciate you watching. Say hi in the chat. Make yourself known. Say hi. Ask any questions. Leave any comments. I'm always happy to engage in conversation with you beautiful people. Thank you that you're here, that you're watching. Also, I was saying this as I'm running out of things to say. I think I might just smoke a pipe of Mapacho and say, take a few deep breaths and see what's present. But that was basically the story. That's the story. That's the situation that I find myself in. Smoking quite a good amount of 5-MeO DMT a couple days ago and saying that I am far from being back to ordinary state consciousness. I can function. But definitely I noticed there's some lesson, there's some difference, there's some process definitely, definitely. So let's take this pipe. Let's get present. I need to clean this pipe. It's not a good pipe. Not a good airflow. It's getting sticky after I smoke it a couple of times. Also, guys, I have a question. I have a lot of content pre-produced. If you're here, you are one of the active participants of this channel, and I deeply appreciate your participation in my journey here and this field. So I would love your input on something. I have a lot of videos pre-produced, lots of content. I have not even published or started to publish things from Madagascar and everything. But we're also here live, right? So I'm rolling out this content bit by bit, but also we're here live. I have this long hair, right? And so I'm a shapeshifter. We all are. And I like to express that physically and go through different phases of my life. And I've been thinking about like what to do with this hair. Shall I just make it a bit nicer? Shall I get dreads? I tried to get some natural dreads, didn't really follow through properly with the process. Or is it like, what should I do? And I got the idea to go bold, to just really shave off all my hair. But then the issue and the problem is that we'll be here live. I might even do that live, maybe even on LSD, and shave my head, and it's a beautiful process of detachment and letting go. And it's a very interesting thing that I'm afraid of. That's why I want to do it. And the thing is then that still, while I'm bold or I have this new look, there's going to be videos over weeks or a month that are being rolled out with my long hair. So my question is, shall I just publish all of the ones and this backlog of videos I have all at once, or like daily till there's nothing left anymore, and align basically the timelines of the backlog and the cutting the hair, so that when I'm bald live, I can actually be then also in the new videos. You see this actual sense of self right now. Or are you fine with just having this discrepancy and of timeline in the presentation of myself? Because now I can keep up the illusionary sense that the videos I shot and that are being published are basically almost recent, right? So it's something I'm struggling with. I don't know. It's a funny little issue. Hey Vanessa, thanks. Thanks for saying hi. So yeah. What shall I do? Please let me know. Like I'm gonna make a poll as well, maybe in the next few days to let you know. Like, but I definitely I want to plan out this date of changing my look. I like to change my looks every once in a while, radically. I think I even did it like a couple of years ago. I shaved my head, but now it's a bit more extreme, and might be nice to have a new look. Get away from this Jesus look. People call me Jesus way too much on the streets when I'm walking around. What were you smoking? Thank you. I love your channel. Thank you. This is mapacho tobacco. So it's basically just pure tobacco from the jungle, from the Amazon, and I love to smoke it. It has a very grounding effect. It really brings me into the body, into the moment, into my center. It's a wonderful tool, even in psychedelic space, to be. It's a wonderful ally to help you navigate your journey. And I really love it. I really, really love tobacco. But I do notice it's hard. It's hard on the lungs. It's not... Smoking anything is not good for your health, right? So, what are we doing here? I'm gonna finish off this live stream. If there's any questions from you, if you want to get a conversation going, let's do this. Otherwise, I might finish this off very soon. Yeah, I'm excited for what's to come, guys. Honestly, there's lots of inspiration within me. Lots of beautiful things, transmissions, videos that are coming out around psychedelic integration, around self-actualization, around self-realization, around also there's another presentation planned regarding the nature of language and basically the language that we use to describe psychedelics. The word psychedelic itself, we're going to be inquiring into that. And I'll propose a new word for psychedelics. That's going to be very interesting. And also, yeah, what else? More shorts. I don't know if you enjoy the short form content, and more, yeah, just more beautiful stuff, honestly. I think I want to move into really more well-produced videos, really well-produced videos with deeper content, maybe even longer sessions of like 40 to 50 minutes of actual real value. Vanessa's saying, some weeks ago I got a book that you recommended, LSD and the Mind of the Universe. If I'm not wrong, I think it was your recommendation. It was probably my recommendation. Beautiful that you bought this book. Yeah, I'm talking almost every video, almost every live stream, I'm talking about this book. I don't even have it here in my home anymore because I'm giving it away constantly to people who can read it because I can't stop talking about it. I'm glad that have you started reading it? Are you enjoying it? If not, I am sure you will. It's a very beautiful book. And he again, also Chris Beige, in his book of LSD and the Mind of the Universe, he is also displaying it. He's a prime example of what we were talking about in this live stream. these prolonged permanent shifts in consciousness based on and as a consequence of psychedelic use. So for him it wasn't 5-MeO DMT, but he was working with very high doses of LSD, and he was describing this similar sensation of these intense energies, this intense energy working through his system that his body can't even contain or properly integrate. And then he was describing the consequences of very, very interesting sensations. He even wrote a book about his experience as a professor in university, teaching from this permanently expanded state of consciousness, where he was just picking up certain things from from the field of consciousness, and all of a sudden it resonated with certain students, and it's this incredible journey. It's called the other book he wrote is called The Living Classroom, and he was also describing these throbbing energies in his chest, sleep disruptions. Very, very, very interesting effects. Hard to integrate, the difficulties and challenges of working with these intense energies and with psychedelics. Even if you go about the process with a very strict protocol, with all the preparation, with all the integration, wow, very inspiring and very good to read that we are basically mapping out these possibilities of consequences that can happen with the psychedelic use. Yes, I haven't started yet because right now I'm reading The Myth of Normal. The Myth of Normal, I've heard a lot about it. I think it's on my book list, but my book list is like a bazillion books long, so I can't. I don't know. I'm buying so many books. It's incredible. Right now I am reading. Because I'm in the 5-MeO jam, I'm reading Facilitating 5-MeO DMT, an anthology of approaches to serving the God molecule. Very interesting to read, some perspectives from different kinds of people on what their perspective on 5-MeO DMT is, how they are working with it, and all the different approaches. Very, very, very interesting to see that. Wow, this is a new field, right? And everybody has kind of their own way of going about it. How do you learn to facilitate? When are you ready? How can you serve your clients best? How can you serve the people that are interested in this experience best? And what's your own practice? How do you avoid the traps and the dangers of being a facilitator? Lots of horrendous stories and bad practices, bad from my judgment and my perception at least, or harmful, even potentially harmful practices in the 5-MeO space. Right? What's an appropriate way to facilitate sessions, and what's appropriate, what's not appropriate? Preaching, teaching, talking. What kind of touch is appropriate? What kind of way of holding space and invading the space of the person having the experience. All of this, very interesting. At the same time, I'm reading Appreciate Your Life, the essence of Zen practice. I was on this appreciation jam of really deepening my path of spiritual awakening as solely focusing on appreciating every appearance of reality. And so I bought this book because I wrote the title, and I love the basic Zen teachings. It's very beautiful. Maybe I can read something from it. I don't know. No, I don't feel like it. Last things I was marking was I love this one. While walking, it's a story about Gensha. Gensha embarked on a pilgrimage to other monasteries after he left his master Seppo, a very, very famous Zen master. And then when he walked on his pilgrimage, already 30 years old, he stubbed his toe on a sharp rock, and Gensha cried out, "Where does this pain come from?" And in that instant, he attained realization. It's funny, right? It's a similar inquiry as where's the thought coming from? And if we inquire into this, there's a potential to realize our true nature. Also, one funny statement I wrote today was this sensation that of our language, right? That we talk about, okay, we're taking psychedelics to realize our true nature. This sensation or the framing of a true nature implying that there is a false nature, right? It's like, but from my understanding of reality, there is no false nature. You are already that. You are already Buddha mind. You are already this awake natural state. You can't escape it. There is no false self and true self. That's a useless distinction, and still, I mean, it has its use, and it's a wonderful way of kind of like our way of talking about it. But it also presents a trap to make the distinction, because if you say I have to experience my true nature through psychedelics, through spiritual practice, you are denying the fact that you are that already. Right now, right here, right? So, interesting one. Also, I started reading Ken Wilber, Integral Psychology. Just one of the best, absolutely one of the best holistic, big picture perspectives on psychology and spirituality and consciousness itself. An absolute master, Ken Wilber. And a friend of mine, actually the person I was doing the breathwork session with, he gave me this book and said I shall read it. It's a personal and cultural history of an era, flashbacks, an autobiography by Timothy Leary. It's quite a book, but I'm really excited to peek into this one as well. See, so many books to read. There's more that I'm looking to start to read, and it's like, oh, what book am I gonna read next? It's a fun journey, and still with the insights of the books, I find it's also a delicate journey of integration, right? Because books, just as psychedelic experiences, can be a trap of chasing insight, chasing knowledge, trying to take in the next insight, the next book, the next teaching, the next lesson, and just keeping to chase all these insights and stories and knowledge without actually saying like, okay, wait, this is quite significant, this is quite profound. I'll stay with this insight right here and actually try to implement it and integrate it into my life. Like, what can I take out of this? How can I actually transform my life, transform my perspective based on what I just learned here, instead of just keep learning new things and new things and new things and have this thirst of accumulating theories and perspectives and insights without then actually bothering to integrate them. So it's funny that the process of integration, it's not just important in the psychedelic field, saying like we're going to do our psychedelic integration. I find that the concept of integration is applicable to any consumption of information, right? In a psychedelic experience, we are having this experience of information, basically. We're opening ourselves up to information. There's a great little book. It's a bit controversial, but I found it quite interesting. It's called Psychedelic Information Theory: Shamanism in the Age of Reason by James Kent. James Kent is he has quite an interesting, strong perspective on certain topics, but I liked his quite scientific approach to map out the psychedelic experience. And so it's basically information. And so just as the psychedelic experience, we are receiving content, we are having all these insights, it's a lot of processing of information. So too, as we read a book, we are processing information which we can integrate. So too, when we watch a movie, when we watch a certain series that we like and that we feel inspired by, there might be certain insights from that information that we can integrate. Same goes even for social media posts. How many of your inspiring social media posts or videos or pieces of content that you have been consuming today or in the past week that have really stuck with you and really struck you to the core of your being, have you integrated? I can say for myself, almost none of them, right? Because there's an information overload by just scrolling through and consuming one piece of content after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next, after the next. It's a prime example of the trap of chasing insights. It's very obvious in the field of social media, right? It's not so obvious with the psychedelics or the books or the movies at times. And then the quest becomes like finding our own path of integration. What does it mean to integrate? And I find that basically to integrate, we'll have to leave space for that information to be processed properly. Which is basically implying, for me at least, that there has to be a certain pause of consumption. There has to be a break in between the consumption of information for us to process and integrate and embody the insights and the knowledge and the lessons that we learned from gathering and engaging in content and in information. And how you do that is up to you, right? Hey, DMT Dreams. Good to see you. So if there's any more questions or comments or perspectives, like let me know. But otherwise, I do really, as I said, am still in this very intense state of consciousness, which I might want to sit with a little longer on this Mahashivaratri. And I feel my mind being exhausted from just this communication right here in this live stream. I can't think properly anymore. And I feel also a need to rest further, to not push it too far. So I'm looking for another Shiva mantra to close off this live stream. Yeah, DMT Dreams, good to see you as well. Well, I actually don't see you, but I can hear your comments, read your comments. Basically, if you are curious, again, as a call to action, about seeing me and me seeing you and us communicating together, you're free to join the Psychedelic Actualization community. First or second link in the video description is going to lead you to that. There's going to be more people joining. I have another friend joining very soon. We're going to have a call on Sunday, and it's a beautiful communication where we can step in to the space together and work together, actually in person. For now, it's incredibly cheap. It's never gonna be at that price again. It's $30 a month, $300 a year. That's less than €1 or dollar per day, which is just absolutely incredible for the value. And I think I'll just keep this price for the founding members. So just for the first 5 to 10 members, maybe I'll keep this price. So get in now if you're curious about joining a group of like-minded people to work together. So Yeah, let's sing. Let's sing towards Shiva, because what are we here for? Are we here to talk? Yes, partly, but also we're here to praise this divine consciousness, this ever-present stillness, this unifying field of consciousness. We are here to give praise to life, to existence, to reality itself. And Shiva is one of the names of that. The Tandava, the dance of Shiva, is one of the most beautiful principles, one of the most beautiful symbols of creation I have found and come across so far. It deeply resonates with me. It has been one of the key insights of one of my breakthrough 5-MeO DMT experiences. The dance of life, the dance of Shiva, the dance of existence itself. Everything is this dance of Shiva. And we can appreciate that fact, and we can give praise to that fact, and we can give ourselves to that dance by being in devotion to the words of God. And the words of God, it's so fascinating. I've observed it recently as well, again, that it in many traditions it seems to be always about the name of God. In the Christian church that I was visiting last Sunday, they were saying, "Oh, how beautiful is that name Jesus Christ," right? And in other traditions we have Shiva, we have Kali, we have Muhammad, we have Allah, we have the 99 names of Allah, we have the Sat Nam, the name is truth in Sikhism. We have so many names for that essence of reality. Infinite number of names, and these names that we can repeat and chant are going to be connecting our being to that space. That's what the ayahuasca journey in last year showed me, that the actual chanting of these names has a real power. It's not just not doing anything, but with this right attitude towards it, with this devotional spirit, we can utilize the power of chanting to unite with that energy, and for that energy to inspire and evoke this remembrance of our true nature. So, Shiva, I bow to Shiva, the highest God. I bow to Shiva, through which dance the gunas, the attitudes of nature, are being created and destroyed. Shivaya Parameshwaraya Chandrashekaraya Nama Om Bhavaya Gunasambhavaya Shiva Tandavaya Nama Om Shiva Tandavaya Nama Om Shivaya Parameshwaraya Chandrashekaraya Nama Om Bhavaya Gunasambhavaya Shiva Tandavaya Nama Om Shiva Tandavaya Nama Om Shivaya Bharvaya Gunasambhavaya Shiva Tandavaya Namah Shiva Tandavaya Namah. Oh, the classic one. Shiva 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 Shambho Shiva 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 Shambho Shiva 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 Shambho Shiva 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 Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Shiva Shiva Shambho Shiva 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 Shambho Shiva 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 Shambho Shiva 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 Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Mahadeva Shambho Shiva. Om Namah Shivaya. Yeah, let's celebrate Mahashivaratri together. Thanks for being here with me during this live stream on Mahashivaratri. Let's praise the Lord, praise creation, praise our life, and enjoy this beautiful journey that we are on. This crazy journey filled with challenge and pain and suffering and also bliss and happiness and joy, right? It's a wonderful journey that we are blessed to be experiencing. Basically, we have the jackpot. This human life it feels like it truly is the jackpot. We won the lottery. We won the cosmic lottery, to be able to have this self-reflective awareness. It's absolutely magical, and we can appreciate that fact. And yeah, move with that fact. So that's about it. Thank you, everybody. Have a beautiful night, have a good night, and I love you all. Namaste.